All right, let's talk about some political processes. We're going to start with some key terms. Sovereignty is the right of a state to govern itself without external interference. They can have control over their own internal domestic affairs without having to listen to another country tell them what to do. A nation state is a country with a dominant nations like Japan or Denmark or Iceland or Greece or France that has their own independent government where this nation makes up most of that government and has cultural influence in the country as well as its politics. Self-determination is the right of a people to essentially govern themselves and have political status without external control. So usually self-determination involves stateless nations forming a sovereign state, or at least advocating to form a state, and this state is usually a nation state. So a good example of this is Ireland. When Ireland broke off from the UK in 1922 and eventually became a republic in 1949, this is a prime example of the Irish nation exercising self-determination to establish their own state and practice sovereignty over their own affairs. So these are some very important key terms, and we're going to use this throughout this lesson and the rest of the unit as well. Now let's talk about colonialism and imperialism. We talked about this a good bit in Unit 3. We also brought up the Berlin Conference in Unit 3. It doesn't go away in this unit, and we're going to talk about it in agriculture. So, it's pretty important. So hone this in. The Berlin Conference, which took place in 1884 and 1885, divided Africa amongst different European powers that were going through the Industrial Revolution. So they had goods that they wanted to sell, and they wanted natural resources found in Africa to boost their economies. And so they divided Africa without any type of input from the African nations already living there. And so that created countries with very diverse and often conflicting groups that didn't like each other, and that's led to a lot of tension and violence and war within the African states. For example, the Somali people resided in Somalia across other countries in the Horn of Africa like Ethiopia and Kenya. However, Somalia is not in Ethiopia or Kenya. It's a little bit off to the side. So Somalian people reside in not just Somalia, but Ethiopia and Kenya, and Somalians are an example of a multi-state nation. Colonization was done to extract resources and spread culture, particularly religion. This is an Orthodox church in Nigeria. It also spread Indo-European languages, particularly English, but also like French, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish across Africa. But it also spread government systems as well. For example, when the British colonized India, they were there to extract resources like tea and cotton and a variety of different spices because colonization always had to do with spices. But they also introduced English culture, like the language, and their legal systems, as well as governmental structures as well. India now has a parliamentary system mirroring the British Parliament. English is a major language for governmental administration. They also use a common law system resembling the English common law system as well. So we can see here that British colonization continues to influence India's culture and political structures even after India gained independence. This FRQ is asking to explain one way that political boundaries in Africa illustrate a European colonial emphasis on resource extraction. In simple terms for you, this FRQ is asking you to provide evidence of European control over boundaries in Africa and what exactly did it do. So the best example that students gave were that some colonial boundaries enclosed historically adversarial culture groups within the same countries. They brought them together even though they don't like each other, and this led to conflict, tension, and /or centrifugal forces here. So they use that really pretty key term from Unit 3 here. Some other examples that students gave about colonial boundaries in Africa: they were retained after independence, and that led to conflict over access to natural resources. When populations that traditionally had access to these resources were cut off from them, it split up culture groups like the Somali group, which we talked about earlier, between different countries, and that resulted in a lot of contestation of current state boundaries as these cultures wanted to reunify with each other. It also resulted in multinational states like Nigeria, multi-state nations like the Somali people, and or stateless nations, leading to unresolved border conflicts and as well as just a lot of tension and internal instability here. So we've talked about these a good bit, but that's kind of a good way to phrase this on an FRQ and really hone the concept in. Let's talk about independence movements a little bit. I think the name kind of gives away what this is about, but we'll talk about it a little bit. Efforts by groups or regions within a country to gain political autonomy. Usually it's to establish a sovereign state and get away from a overseeing governing authority. If they are successful, they'll have a new independent state. If they're not, usually there's some kind of violence, civil war, or just prolonged disputed territories. Even if independence isn't achieved, movements can pressure central governments to grant more regional power or self-governance. In Scotland, there has been a lot of movement for greater Scottish sovereignty. They actually had a vote for Scotland to leave the UK. However, that vote did not pass, but Scotland has seen a lot of powers given to them through the United Kingdom. For example, they have their own parliament and they can pass a lot of laws now over their own region. So there is kind of a pro to these independence movements, even though Scotland has not achieved a sovereign state. A prominent example of this is also in Kosovo, which is surrounded by Serbia, North Macedonia, Albania, and Montenegro on the eastern side of Europe. And so Kosovo declared independence from Serbia in 2008. However, Serbia, Russia, China, and some other EU members don't recognize Kosovo as a state. They claim that statehood is illegal, and so Kosovo is blocked from fully integrating into international bodies like the United Nations. And since they don't have this recognition as a state, which is a key component of a political entity achieving statehood, for our course, Kosovo is not a state. They do have a pretty active independence movement, though. And the reason that this tension exists is because of ethnic differences between the Serbian majority and Albanian minority. And this tension has been violent. And I encourage you to look up the Kosovo War that occurred and was pretty violent between these different entities. There's a lot of different nations in this region. This region used to be Yugoslavia, and it broke up because of all the different nations competing against one another. And so we still see some of that reminisce in the different regions of Eastern Europe. Now let's talk about devolution, another very important concept of this course. And there are two different definitions of them, and students often get them confused or they only remember one of them. So it's very important that you know both of them. The first one is that devolution is the breakup of a state into multiple new states. So for example, Czechoslovakia used to be one country, but now it's no longer. It is now split into two different nation states, Slovakia and the Czech Republic. And each of these different states can govern independently with their own different national identities. And the other definition of devolution is the transfer of power from higher to lower governments, from federal to local government. For example, in the United States, that would be from powers going from Washington, D.C. to a state like Florida or Alabama or Mississippi. I'm just going to continue getting further west. In the United Kingdom, we've seen a lot of devolution to these regions like Scotland and Wales. And for Scotland, they got their own parliament right before the new millennium, allowing it to make decisions on issues like education and health. What are ways that devolution can impact political boundaries, however? This is a key question. Well, it can create new states, just like in Czechoslovakia turning into Slovakia and the Czech Republic. We look at Ireland breaking apart from the UK. That created a new state. We can also see increased regional autonomy, like with Scotland, but they can also challenge territorial legitimacy of the country. Devolution can weaken central sovereignty and also fuel regional-based identities within a state. Let's look at Catalonia in particular. This is an autonomous region of Spain. It's one of the richest and most industrialized parts of Spain. They produce a lot of chemicals and plastics these days, but they've also produced a lot of textiles as well, and that's really boosted their economy. And under the 1978 Constitution, Spain granted Catalonia significant autonomy, such as a parliament that can pass laws, control the budget, collect taxes. It's a pretty big step to autonomy in Catalonia. But recently, in 2017, the Catalonian government gave an unconstitutional vote to the citizens. We call this a referendum, and it was just a question. Should Catalonia be independent from Spain? Yes or no? And this made Spain very mad. They suspended their autonomy, they removed its leaders, they reasserted their own direct control. So some things that they did, they dismissed the president of Catalonia, they dissolved the parliament, they took control of the Catalonian police force, and they called for a regional election as well to reassert Spanish control in the region. And this movement here, the Catalonian movement here that did this vote, it created a lot of regional pressures, and it continues to challenge Spain's internal boundaries. And let me show you the results of this referenda vote. 92% of respondents said that Catalonia should be independent. And so you can probably understand why Spain responded as they did here. Voter turnout was particularly high, reaching as high as 70% in some regions here. And over 2 million people said that Catalonia should be independence because they have a lot of political success. They've had their own parliament for decades. They have very high economic flourishment as well. So they believe that they can be a very successful independent state. However, Spain says that they're not independent and they are creating this pressure that they are part of Spain, while this regional identity between the residents of Catalonia has divided them from Spain and created this independence movement, or at least this belief that 92% of them think that they should have their own independent state. And so this is a very ongoing conflict. I'm very curious to see how this continues to play out. Of course, we've talked about Ireland a good bit. We'll talk about it a little bit more, a little bit of history. I don't think you need to know any particular dates or anything, but it makes the concept a lot clearer. So the partition of Ireland was created in 1921. It created a free Irish state after years of conflict, like the Easter Rising, which was a failed rebellion during Easter week by the Irish. And then the Irish War of Independence was fought by the Irish Republican Army and the British. We have two main groups here. We have the nationalists and the unionists. The nationalists are the Catholics, and they are the ones that wanted independence from Britain. They're the ones that wanted a sovereign Irish state. The unionists are the partisans, and they wanted to remain in the UK. So we see religious divisions here. They feared that independence would lead to Catholic domination. So that's why they want to stay part of the UK. The Irish Free State remained a British dominion after 1921, but over time, British influence was curtailed and withdrawn. They adopted a constitution in 1937, and by 1949, they declared full independence, and the Republic of Ireland was born. So here's a great example of devolution. And devolution just doesn't happen overnight. It can take decades of conflict and decades of different influence and laws to fully devolve a state into a new one, or at least give more autonomy. It could take a lot of pressure to create devolution. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really does help me out, and it costs $0. I have some free resources for you in the description down below if you'd like to use them. If you have any AP Human Geography related questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below the video or send me a message on Discord. I'll see you guys in the next video, though. Adios.